Number 1. Bloody Mabel. My high school had this building that was closed down. We called it the old building. It really wasn't any older than any other building on the campus, but for some strange reason it was closed down. The doors were boarded up, and students were forbidden to try and get into that building. The story that was passed along the other students was that there was an old janitor named Mabel, although he was a guy, who worked in the old building. He was working late in the building one night when an escaped lunatic broke into the school. The lunatic supposedly killed Mabel by drowning him in the toilet. Afterwards, he took a hacksaw, hacked Mabel up into tiny pieces, and flushed him down the toilet. So they closed the building down because they didn't think it was right having children be taught in a building in which a brutal murder took place. And of course, you know an urban legend doesn't just stop there. And you know how kids are not really original. So there was the idea that if you went into one of the bathrooms in the old building, made sure the stall doors were all closed, and said Bloody Mabel 5 times in the mirror, Mabel would climb out of the toilet, come through the stall door, and murder you. Of course we knew the story wasn't true, but guys would often dare each other to go into the old building and do this little ritual. So the day came along that I was dared by some rivals of mine to break into the old building and try the ritual out. Unbeknownst to the faculty, the students had a way of getting into the old building through a window. Pretending to be brave, but actually being a bit nervous, I climbed into the building. The old building was a lot like any abandoned building you'd see. It was unkempt. There was tons of graffiti on the wall. The lore was that you were supposed to find the boys' bathroom on the east end of the bottom floor. It wasn't very difficult to find. There was Bloody Mabel graffiti on the wall. Well, as much as I could see with my small flashlight. I guess I should have mentioned it was dark out. However, I wasn't allowed to use a light when I did the ritual. I'm not particularly sure how anyone would know, but I decided to play by the rules. The middle stall door was already closed when I went into the bathroom. I went over to the sink that was facing the stall. Then, with a bit of a nervous chuckle, I began saying it. Bloody Mabel. Bloody Mabel. Bloody Mabel. Bloody Mabel. As anyone would, I made sure to pause before saying it the final time. With a deep breath, I said, Bloody Mabel. I stood there, half expecting something to happen. Of course, nothing did. The bit of nervousness I felt was beginning to go away. I actually felt a lot relaxed. I turned around, walked into the hallway, and came face to face with a nasty-looking man standing there in dirty clothes, looking me in the eye. In shock, I fell down on the floor. The guy looked like a vagrant or something, really dirty, unshaven and such. He didn't have a weapon at all, but the sheer look on his face told me he was pissed at me for being there. He was likely just a homeless guy who was living in the old building undetected. But now, I had detected him, and that wasn't good. I tried to get up, but when I moved, he loomed over me. I was scared, and had no idea what the guy would do. He grabbed me, and pulled me up, and pushed me against the wall hard. I remember having the wind knocked out of me. Then, I did the only thing I could do, and it was automatic. I didn't even think about it. I used every ounce of strength I had and kneed him right in the crotch. He buckled over but didn't let go of me, so I kneed him again 2 more times and the guy fell over. Then I just hightailed it way out of the old building. My friends all noticed how disheveled I looked. I told them someone was in the building, and at first they thought I was just trying to scare them by claiming it was Bloody Mabel. But I explained what happened. One of my friends went and called the police. The police searched the old building but didn't find anyone. Me and my buds were by the window, and we know the guy didn't come out. So either he had found another way out, or he had a really good hiding place. I mean, it had to be one of those two because there can't be any such thing as Bloody Mabel.
Number 2. Boarding bully. I went to boarding school as a child. My family is pretty well off, and they always tried to make it seem like sending me to a boarding school was best for my education. I honestly thought it was best for them to avoid parenting as much as possible. If I sound bitter, I'm really not. For the most part, I really enjoyed boarding school. However, there was one year, when I was 12, that I didn't have a very positive experience there. There was this guy in my grade who was a bit of a bully. He was the type that goes to a really good school, and you almost wonder how he even got in. Now, if that makes me sound like I'm bitter, it's because I am. His name was Scott, and he made my life a living hell for a short period of time. Whenever he saw me, he would push me, poke me, prod me, call me every name in the book. I really didn't know why he singled me out for this sort of torment, because I was definitely not a nerdish or bookish type, but there was just something about me that he didn't like. Our interaction probably would not have gone past just normal bullying, if it hadn't have been for one incident in particular. I was walking on the grounds between classes. It had been raining and the ground was really wet and mushy. I was in a bit of a hurry to get to class, when I suddenly tripped over something and fell face first into a large puddle of mud. I was covered in wet sludge. I turned over and saw Scott there. He was laughing his arse off, as if he had seen the funniest thing in his whole life. I couldn't go to class all messy, and knew that I had to go back to my dorm room to change my clothes. I would of course be late for class, and would likely get demerits for it. Pissed beyond belief, I grabbed a handful of mud and hurled it right in Scott's face. Getting up, I kicked him hard in the crotch. He crumpled to the ground, cursing at me. He was threatening the hell out of me too. The problem was that in his current condition, he really wasn't able to do much. After that event, I didn't even mind the fact that I was late for class. I felt really good about standing up for myself. It was quite short-sighted though. I honestly thought that my problems with Scott were completely over. That night I returned to my dorm and the lights were out. I saw that my roommate was lying in his bed, so decided not to disturb him. I came in, undressed, and decided to get some rest myself. I got into bed and dozed off. A little while later, something awoke me. I wasn't sure what, but something definitely had. I looked around the room and saw my roommate was sitting up in his bed looking over at me. I asked him if something was wrong, but he didn't respond. He just sat there looking at me. After a moment he waved me off, and lay back down on the bed. I thought it was weird but didn't think too much of it and dozed back off. The next time I woke up, it was because I felt someone nudge me. I opened my eyes and saw Scott leaning over me. My eye shot over my roommate's bed and it was empty. I was going to yell, but Scott put his hand over my mouth and pressed really hard against it. He then took out a pocket knife. Scared, I tried screaming again. I tried to bite his hand. I tried to do anything to get him off me, but to no avail. Scott flipped open the blade. Then he took the knife and slowly traced it down, stopping at my boxer shorts. "You kicked me in the balls," he said. "It seems only fair I get you back in a similar way." I screamed in his hand some more and tried with all my might to push him off. Fortunately, though, he moved the knife away from my boxers. He brought it up to my face. He cut a little line down my cheek. I felt the blood spill out as I began crying. "Next time, it will be your balls," he said. He then punched me in the face and warned me that if I tell anyone, he would kill me. Well, of course, I told. I mean, anyone who doesn't tell on a bully who has threatened them with a knife needs to have their head examined. He was picked up by the campus police and got turned over to the actual police and expelled from school. I never saw him again, thank God. Or at least not whilst I was awake. I definitely dreamt that night over and over again for years.
Number 3. The Teachers' Strike. I remember when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade, my school had a teacher strike. It was a long one, too. School was canceled every day for at least 2 weeks. When it appeared that the strike was not going to end, the school board brought in substitute teachers to teach all the classes. A lot of the students were pretty pissed off that their extended summer break had finally ended. I was ecstatic, however, that I was finally getting back to class. Yeah, so, I was a nerd. What of it? Well, of course the teachers striking were pretty pissed off about the substitutes. A few of them were so immature about it, that they even heckled some of the students as they were going to class. One of the teachers, we'll just call her Mrs. Lulek, said some pretty nasty things to me as I was walking by the picket line. She sort of had a reputation for being a bit of a bitch, though, so I did my best to just ignore her. It was really an odd way to behave towards a 3rd grader. One of the days that I was in class, another incident happened. Mrs. Lulek got way too close to the building. I was supposed to have been in her classroom had the teachers not been on strike. While our substitute was out of the room, she came right up to the open window, stuck her arm in, and acting like she was trying to grab for something. It scared the crap out of all of us, and she left before the substitute came back, though. All in all, a strike was one thing, but this woman came across as mentally unbalanced to me, and this is from the perspective of a 3rd grader. Really mentally unbalanced. And of course there was the boundary the striking teachers were not supposed to cross, and she had no respect for not crossing it. The strike went on for the 3rd week, with more of these strange incidents going on. I told my mom about it, and she claimed she would call the school about it. I'm not sure if she did, though. However, when I went to school on Monday morning, I noticed that Mrs. Lulek was not in the picket line. I felt a little better about that. I even guessed that if the strike ended, she might not become my teacher because of her actions. During the 3rd class of that day, I really had to go to the bathroom, like really badly, and I couldn't wait for the normal bathroom break. So I raised my hand to see if I could go. I walked into the bathroom to one of the urinals, and as I was walking to the sink, a stall door opened and someone grabbed me and pulled me into the stall, closing the door behind us. I was turned around and I saw that it was Mrs. Lulek, and she was in the boys' bathroom. She grabbed me and started shaking me. She kept blabbering about wanting her effing classroom back. She shook me hard, and my head hit into the wall of the stall several times. I'm sure it was then that I started crying. I was terrified. She pushed me back against the stall and I fell on the floor, bawling. The stall door opened then, and the custodian was there. He saw what was happening. He instructed Mrs. Lulek to step back from me, and then put his hand out for me. I grabbed it. He pulled me to my feet and led me out of the bathroom. He took me down to the nurse's office before going to speak to the principal. My parents came to school to pick me up. My father, of course, was furious. He demanded that Mrs. Lulek be arrested and fired. I don't really know exactly what happened to her, but I do know she did not become my teacher that year, and I never saw her again.
Number 4. The Nice Janitor. When I was in elementary school, there was a nice janitor that I really liked. Most of the kids made fun of him actually, but I was never sure why. They told stories about him and claimed that he was mentally retarded or that he had escaped from the crazy house. I think it was just because he seemed a little off to them. He was quiet and never responded when any of the other students would talk to him, and would sometimes stare at people quite blankly. I was the type of kid, however, that hated to see people sad. I hated to see people get picked on. So one day, when I saw how sad the janitor looked, I decided to do something nice for him. I went out during recess, picked a couple of daisies, and brought them into the school and gave them to him. He took them and I actually saw the man smile for the very first time. I also heard him speak for the very first time when he said thank you. After that, for a couple of weeks, the janitor seemed a lot different than before. He smiled whenever he saw me. He would say, "Hi Jenny," and I would always say hi right back to him. Some of the other kids made fun of me for talking to him, and joked that the retarded janitor had a crush on me. I just ignored them though. People saying mean things never really bothered me all that much. A few weeks after I had the first talk with the janitor, I bought him some more flowers from the schoolyard. This time when I handed them to him, he thanked me, and he said something else. "Do you want to see where I keep all the daisies you bring me?" he asked. I of course nodded and told him yes. I was pretty interested. He then told me to follow him. He led me down to the janitor's closet, which was a bit down the hall. He opened the door and turned on the light. I had given him a lot of flowers over the past 5 or 6 weeks, and it seemed like every single one of them was in there. He also had my school picture, who knows how he got it, hanging up on the wall by the vase that was overstuffed with dying flowers. For the first time, I was a bit concerned about the guy. Before I could even talk to him, the janitor grabbed me and pushed me into the room. I fell down on my knees. He then flicked the light off for some reason and closed the door. I heard it lock from the outside. I panicked, like any 10-year-old girl would in that situation. I began screaming and crying at the top of my lungs. I ran over to the door and began pounding on it with my fists and kicking it with my feet. Tears flowed down my face. The only fortunate thing was that I was really too young to have any idea what he probably wanted from me. It was likely that I was only closed in the closet for a few minutes, but it seemed like forever. I eventually heard the key in the door, and the janitor opened it. Right beside him was the school principal and the gym teacher. Apparently a few kids saw him shove me in the closet and ran to get the principal. He took me by the hand and said that he would take me to the nurse's office to call my parents, and the gym teacher had the janitor by the collar and was told to take him to the principal's office and call the police. I was okay. My mum and dad were so pissed though. They demanded that the man be fired and put in jail. He obviously was fired, as I never saw him again, but I have no idea if he even went to jail. To this day, my parents will not tell me anything else about the incident.
Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. Stay tuned until the end of the outro here to see the link for the second half of this collaboration on Mortis Media's channel. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the button below, or the one that will appear at the end of this closing to be informed of new content. You can also let me know what you think of this video by leaving comments. And also, feel free to share the video with someone you might think will enjoy it. Feel free to follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks to Mortis Media for this collaboration. And be sure to check out the other half of the collaboration on his channel. And if you're not already subscribed to his great horror channel, make sure to subscribe while you're over there. This is our third collaboration, and I have to admit, it's always great working with him. Mortis will, in fact, be appearing with both me and Being Scared in a 3-video Christmas collaboration in the coming days. Each channel will feature stories read by all 3 narrators. I hope you look forward to it. In the meantime, please don't forget to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.